Welcome to First Draft for December. So December 1st, First Draft, super exciting. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're tonight going to have a lot of holiday fun and talk about First Draft's favorite holiday foods. And we'll also delve a little bit into food and fiction and what makes that work so well. We are really excited tonight to have a special guest with us, Elisabeth Lane of Cooking Up Romance, who is an expert on all things food and books, so perfect guest for talking about our favorite foods tonight, and we're really looking forward to that. I will go around the virtual room here and sort of let everyone introduce themselves. So I will actually start with our special guest, Elisabeth, if you just want to introduce yourself and also let us know what you're drinking.
Sure. Hi, I'm Elisabeth Lane. I write the blog Cooking Up Romance. I pair romance reviews with recipes, sometimes of my own devising, sometimes just old favorites that I've had for years. I've been doing that for about a year and a half, and I love it. And tonight I am drinking a cranberry Cosmo. Can you see that? Okay. It's cranberry juice, vodka, lime juice, and Grand Marnier. And it seemed appropriate to the thing that everybody else is drinking, but that I didn't have all the ingredients for.
I think we're doing varying ingredients on that one. Alexis, I'll let you go next.
I would like to note that Elizabeth's drink is very pretty also, and I'm very jealous of that.
Oh, yeah, it had like cranberries. Can you see that? I can't get it high enough. There we go.
Yeah,
see, it had cranberries. I took them off because I can't drink them with it on there.
Very nice.
Hi, I'm Alexis Ann. I write contemporary and erotic romance. You can find me at alexisannbooks.com. And tonight I went just super simple, and I'm drinking straight up champagne. There's nothing fancy in it, but it is the holidays, so yay.
Except you do have to tell us, because you told us before the show, your glass that you're drinking the champagne in is super special.
It is. This champagne glass is my wedding champagne glass, so it is 12 years old. And my husband very kindly took off the bride charm from the bottom so that I wouldn't be clanking through the whole show.
Thank you, husband who's good at sound things.
Right?
I never would have thought about that. And my name is Mary Chris Escobar, and I write women's fiction, and you can find me at marychrisescobar.com. I am drinking the drink that I posted about, so if I post about it, I have to drink it. It's a cranberry Kir Royale, so a little bit of champagne, or probably sparkling wine. I don't think it's actually champagne, with some cassis and some cranberry juice cocktail. And I have not just one, but two cranberries sort of floating in there, but I don't think you can really see that. The drink called for one cranberry, and I bought an entire bag of cranberries, so clearly, I have to put at least two in my glass.
Exactly.
Yes. All right, and right on cue, Miss Julia Kelly has joined us. We're going around doing introductions, and we just finished, and so you're up if you want to introduce yourself.
I've got fantastic timing.
You do.
I'm sorry for being late again. It's another taxi dilemma in New York City. So I'm Julia Kelly. I write historical and contemporary romance, and I'm not drinking anything right now. I'm taking a little bit of a break after a very saucy weekend. A lot of wine and a lot of whiskey. So I think I have a company Christmas party tomorrow, so this is a good idea for me. So.
That's appropriate to talk about for the holidays, taking a little break.
Yes, exactly.
Pacing yourself for the holidays.
Exactly. Pacing yourself while on deadline after a very boozy weekend.
Definitely. And Lexi has extra champagne behind her, so she'll
have
a glass for you.
Perfect.
I can just volt it through this computer screen up to New
One day that's going to be possible, and it's going to be beautiful.
It is.
The transporter.
I'll make you dinner and hand it through the screen, too, when that's possible. Well, I thought I would start off with, since we're talking about favorite foods, and we just went around and talked about our favorite or our drinks that we're drinking tonight. Does anybody have a favorite holiday cocktail or a holiday drink, something that you strongly associate with the holidays?
So I really like mulled cider. And we do this thing where we float an orange studded with cloves in it and cinnamon sticks and put it in the crock pot and leave it on, warm all day. And then, maybe top it off with a little bit of whiskey in the glass when we get ready to serve it. So I feel like I'm in good company here with the whiskey. I'm sure you guys would like that too.
Yes.
And it sounds like it smells amazing. Does it make your whole house smell?
It really does. It makes it smell like apples and cinnamon and cloves and orange. It's just like it's the super holiday smell and it's like all natural without all the like yucky potpourri candle whatever smell. So
nice. Awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. I associate that very much with the start of fall because they're, up in New York, apple picking is a very real thing, especially in October and really in October. But I think you can probably sneak it in November as well. So, but no, I love that idea. I might actually do that when I'm at home for the holidays. There is a cocktail that I make every year, and I can't remember what it is because I look it up every year. I think it's from the back of like a Nigella Lawson book or something like that. But it's pink or it's red, and it sparkles because it has champagne. And I think really the big thing in my family is there's a lot of champagne. It's a big celebratory time. It's when we all get together. I'm in New York, they're in the UK, and so we don't see each other very often. So usually, all the little things that pop up during the year to celebrate, we kind of celebrate all at once during the holidays. So yeah, that's really the big one for me. A lot of champagne or sparkling wine or whatever it is that sparkles and looks pretty. So
nice.
Yeah, we tend to drink a lot of champagne during the holidays, and I was just trying to look up the drink that I used to drink. It's white something. It's not a white Russian. It's a different white name, and now I can't remember.
Lady?
What?
A white lady? It's a gin drink?
No, that's not it either. Can't remember what it is to
We have to
save
do
my
some
life.
research. A lot of taste testing.
Yeah. I would say for me it's mulled wine, and I have a really specific memory. I have good friends that used to live in Scotland, and my husband and I went over for sort of a long weekend to London and met them there, and we were walking around a market drinking mulled wine from a street vendor. So I have this really positive holiday time, and it was early December when we went, so I have this very positive association with mulled wine. And without fail, I make it every year. I'll put a pot of wine on the stove with spices in it, and nobody drinks it. But so it's totally nostalgia, and I can never convince anyone else to drink it. But last year, one of the bars in my neighborhood started making mulled wine, which was a much better prospect because then I could just go have a mug of it and not an entire pot of it that I had made for myself. Good. Kind of moving on from that idea of drinks that we associate with the holidays, how about food memories? So my husband and I were talking about this driving to Thanksgiving dinner, but thinking about food traditions or food memories. So it could be something from childhood or something that you currently do as a tradition, but do you have strong foods that you're it just wouldn't be the holidays if I didn't have whatever it is? And I'll let anybody.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's well, of course. There's actually two. There's one from my childhood, and then the other one that I sort of started as an adult and just have continued with my husband. And the first one, the childhood memory, is my neighbors who are British used to make these sausage rolls at Christmas, and the only time they ever made them was Christmas Eve. And they were just like bulk sausage, and they used this pie crust mix that you bought in a Jiffy box. You know what I mean? The little teeny boxes of Jiffy pie crust mix.
Yeah.
And I still make them that way, even though I could probably do better at this point. But it's just, that's what tastes like home, so that's what I do. And then the other thing that I've done now is for Christmas morning, I do bananas Foster waffles. So you make waffles, and then you do the bananas Foster, set everything on fire and put it over the top. And I make them once a year, and they're horrible for you, but it's the perfect thing for Christmas morning.
Yeah, I think horrible for you is pretty much a requirement for
I don't think the sausage rolls are probably any better.
No, I was just thinking all of the leftovers that I just ate this weekend. I didn't do Thanksgiving with family, but I did the weekend with family, and all of the leftovers I ate, and the sheer amount of stuffing is pretty incredible. So we have two really strong holiday traditions, and in fact, they've been going on so long. I was just sitting here thinking about whether I've ever remembered a holiday without them, except for the one where I didn't spend it with family. I was working, unfortunately. So every year my father makes a recipe that is handwritten on cards by my grandmother, and actually I took photographs of, because I want to make sure that this stuff never goes missing, because I'll never be able to replicate it if it does. But we call them sugar crisps. They're like these flat disc pastries that are a little bit more bready than they are like flaky. They're not like Italian or French pastries, but they're cinnamon sugar, and some are rolled with pecans as well. And for whatever reason, we've just been doing this for years, and I found out that part of the family does them for Thanksgiving morning. We do them for Christmas morning. So my dad always makes that. He's the great baker in the family. And then my mother does a full standing rib roast English dinner, so with the roasted potatoes and everything. But the big thing is the beef, and then from that, you get the drippings to do Yorkshire puddings, and it's the only time of year that we can convince her to do them, because they're not labor-intensive, they're just a lot. It's more the cleaning up afterwards is really labor-intensive, because you use a lot of fat and a lot of grease. But they just are the most incredible tasting things, and they literally, you have to eat them within 20 minutes of them coming out of a really hot oven. And that to me is Christmas more than anything else, to the point where I'm sitting in my tiny studio apartment right now, and my mother and I did the full Christmas dinner after my dad had done the full Christmas breakfast in this apartment, and we made sure that we had the standing rib roast, and we made sure that we had the Yorkshire puddings, and did the whole thing. And she turned to me afterwards and said, "Well, you're a woman now." I was like, because I wasn't before. But no, it's just that very strong familial association with passing recipes down. That's really the big thing in my family, is those traditions that we have and kind of hold through the family through all the years.
Mm-hmm.
That's really nice. It was actually, we had Thanksgiving this week at my sister's for the very first time, and we've kind of had this weird mishmashing of holidays for the last few years. It's kind of like the passing of the guard, I guess, as my grandparents have gotten older and then passing on, and my parents trying to figure out what they want to do, and then the adult children, and they have much younger children. So we have all these weird traditions kind of passing and not passing all at the same time right now. And the first my sister decided she wanted to do what we considered an old-fashioned Thanksgiving, which is basically food in courses from beginning to end of the day until you think that you've eaten food until you're going to die. And it's awesome and amazing. And we walk in, and she has all the appetizers spread out, including this giant tray of chilled shrimp with shrimp cocktail sauce in the middle. And that was always my thing. My grandmother made it for every holiday for me, because I was obsessed with it. For my 16th birthday, she made me an entire, 2 pounds of it and gave it to me, and it was like, eat as much as you want, honey.
I will.
And I did. And that was sitting there on the table, and I was just like, oh, it's the holidays. and that was really nice to see. But other than that, our food tends to vary a little bit. But breakfast in the morning is always my dad. He does a giant spread in the morning and feeds us until we think that we have eaten enough for 5 people. And it's pancakes and French toast and eggs and bacon and sausage and grits and potatoes that he cuts and seasons that morning as he's cooking. And it is awesome. And then we start all over again with leftovers a couple hours later, because that's all we do is eat.
Yeah, they're big eating holidays around this time of year.
I know.
I don't know if that's the case for anybody else, but all of my family traditions are associated with food, even if it's not the food itself. It's kind of all the stuff that goes around it.
Definitely. We don't do it anymore, but I have a strong childhood association of fried oysters at Christmas.
Ooh.
Yeah, my grandfather used to bread them in crushed up saltine crackers and fry them in a little frying pan, which we're not a frying family. I grew up ostensibly in the South, but I didn't grow up eating fried chicken or, the only thing I really remember is these fried oysters, and they only came on Christmas Eve, and then oyster stew the next day, which I didn't like as a child, but I do actually like now. But I have a really strong Christmas Eve oyster association. It's not something I've carried into adulthood, but I definitely remember that. I also have a cranberry sauce thing that is a more recent thing. My grandmother-in-law, I guess, my husband's grandmother makes amazing cranberry sauce, and will even occasionally remember to make me my own little portion without celery in it, which is like the sweetest thing in the world. I have a weird celery allergy, and honestly, I eat her cranberry sauce even when it has celery in it. I just put up with the allergy, but sometimes she remembers. It's not good, but sometimes she remembers, and she makes me a little like Tupperware bowl without celery, which is really sweet.
You know, speaking of new traditions, there is one that actually I associate with Merry Chris because there's an orange cranberry bread that I started making a few years ago, and I don't know how it came up, but for whatever reason, I shot you the email, and since then I make it every year for Christmas. And for some reason, that cranberry and orange combination is very winter to me, and I just absolutely love it. So I'm actually looking at my kitchen thinking I really should figure out when I can make that this weekend.
And I was actually just thinking about that because somehow I lost that email because I also made it this year around the thank you. But I have a whole bag of cranberries because there's like 2 floating in my drink, and the rest of them are in my refrigerator.
Yeah, no,
exactly. And you posted it on, I think, Amy Jo Cousins on her thing, but I was like, I need to get the recipe again because if this Facebook page goes away, I'm not going to.
I know, you're never going to find it. It's really it's simple and straightforward. It's just a silver palette cookbook recipe, but for whatever reason, it's just exactly the thing that I want to eat this time of year, especially as it gets cold.
Definitely, and it's not too sweet. It's a nice like tart.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. How about Elisabeth and Lexi, do you guys have something that you really like to make? Do you have a favorite holiday recipe, or is that too hard? Can you narrow it down to one favorite?
And there's silence.
Staring at each other blankly. Do we have a favorite? Like a one favorite? That would be really hard.
Yeah, that would be really hard.
To a child.
Do you have like several things or a certain type of thing? Like, do you always like to make cookies or cakes or pies or?
Oh, well.
or all of that.
So, I try to do something different every year for Christmas. I get kind of turkeyed out at Thanksgiving, and I'm not a huge beef person, so I really don't. I'll eat it, but it's not my favorite thing. So last year I made a duck with citrus cherry port sauce, which has since made an appearance on my blog, of course. But that's not like a favorite thing. It was just what I made last year. But what I do every year is I do an insane number of cookies. I think last year I stopped counting because it started to scare me. But the year before, it was 84 dozen cookies.
Oh my God! Do you give them as gifts?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was going to say, who are you feeding?
Yeah. No, my husband's coworkers and my coworkers and neighbors and people at church, and there's always gatherings where you have to bring something, and so I just end up, baking a ton of cookies and sticking the more durable ones in the freezer so that I can just pull them out when I need to, have a cookie tray to bring somewhere. And they do get eaten, every last one of them.
I bet.
So that'll be this Thursday and Friday, actually. I'll start my holiday baking.
I cannot wait to see the tweets about that.
Oh,
I know. If you're watching and you don't follow Elisabeth on Twitter, you must. But I will warn you, you will get really, really, really hungry when she's
Or you'll end up revising everything that you were planning on doing for dinner and then just end up making whatever it was that was on her site for the day, because that's happened a few times.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
No. New recipes are always good. Fun.
I actually am similar to Elisabeth in that every year I make banana bread and I give it to everybody who will take it. My great aunt has the family recipe, and I used to make her recipe exactly, but then I started incorporating other ingredients, and so now I have my own recipe that I use, and it includes applesauce and not just white flour, but wheat flour, and sometimes I add crushed pineapple to it, and it's delicious, and I love it, and I give it to everybody, and everyone loves it.
Unsurprisingly, my banana bread recipe has bourbon in it.
No, shocker.
I need to know
also
how
I
much
want
to
that.
add.
I'll find it for you and add it to that pin board.
I was going to say, is it on the Pinterest board? So we are going to have a fabulous Pinterest board that Elisabeth created with lots of recipes that we'll post under the video on YouTube. So.
Oh, and I'm in charge of making sweet potato casserole for everyone forever. Because about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided I hate marshmallows, and that was the only thing that ever showed up at family gatherings was sweet potatoes with marshmallows on the top. So I took it upon myself to find a better recipe, and I am now in charge of sweet potatoes.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I don't like sweet potatoes and marshmallows either, and I know it's a really big Southern thing, and I have a bunch of, especially for Thanksgivings, I used to do a lot of Thanksgivings at work. I still do. I was there this year. I have never been a fan of the marshmallows on top thing. I think it's because I like sweet potatoes' natural sweetness anyway, so I'm right there with you. But I'm sure I just offended like 14 different people by saying that I don't eat it with sweet potatoes. But you can have it your way. I just don't like the marshmallows on top. It's not my thing.
Just gonna dig under them.
Yeah, no, that's basically what I do. Is just get under there and.
I don't like them either. I don't even really like sweet potatoes all that much. But we've been doing Friendsgiving for I've been doing Friendsgiving for like 20 years. My husband and I have only been married for 5. But and every year I try to ask people who are, can't get home for Thanksgiving or whatever, if they have one particular dish that says Thanksgiving to them.
That's
and
really
last
nice.
year, my friend, one of my friends was like, yes, I have to have sweet potato casserole with the marshmallows. And I'm like, oh God, okay. So, and I've never done this, so I had to look up recipes. But there's this one blogger she's actually a pastry chef, and she's amazing. Her name's Stella Parks, and she writes this blog called Brave Tart. And she has the best instructions for everything. Anyway, so she made this sweet potato casserole with brown butter sage marshmallows, homemade brown butter sage marshmallows. And even though I still was a little bit like the marshmallow sweet potato thing is still not really my thing, the marshmallows by themselves were really, really good.
They sound really good.
They sound amazing.
I mean, marshmallows can't be savory, right? So did they just have like a hint of?
Yeah, they were kind of just like brown butter, herby marshmallows. It was really
good, actually.
It's a really good combination.
Yeah, I just don't like marshmallows. I think that's what really the real moral of the story is
that would be a big problem.
Yeah, I try. I try in the hot chocolate, but unless it's in a s'more where it's drowned by chocolate and graham cracker, I'm not a big fan.
And see, I love it in the hot chocolate because it melts, and so it gets this different consistency and combination going on, and so I'm okay with it in the hot chocolate.
Fair.
But this whole conversation is my favorite part of the holidays because you have friends and families that come together, and these recipes combine, and the stories and the histories behind them they get told, and they get combined, and they get passed on, and that is my favorite part of the holidays.
Definitely. And I do love that, and I love what you said, Elisabeth, about is there one food that just people who maybe can't be with their family make them, that they associate with that person. And I feel like I didn't get to it this year, but my good friend who lives in England, we spent a lot of Thanksgivings together growing up, and she taught me how to make apple pie. And so making an apple pie is the way that I have her with me at Thanksgiving. So yeah, I think it is just so beautiful how you have these associations with food and people. Yeah.
And that's what you just said is that addition of that food, it makes family feel like they're with you even when they're not. That's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a really good segue into talking about food. Thank you. I couldn't have planned it better. Talking about food in stories and why people, you just addressed why we kind of talk about food in life because it's part of our history and part of people that we're close to. But what is the purpose of including food in books? What are authors using that for? Or maybe a better place to start is, in what ways are authors using that? What are the different ways food can be incorporated into books?
Well,
I have it.
Go for it.
No.
It's a built-in way to give a character backstory or to introduce their family and their circumstances without having to go into a great deal of detail. Apparently that was really hard to say. So food and traditions like this are just a really instant, ready-made way to deliver information and feeling and emotion and connection, because we all eat and we all associate certain memories and feelings with food, and so it's a built-in way to connect with your reader and to develop those connections with characters.
I think also, so I have a very technical answer and I have a very emotional answer to it. And the technical side is sometimes it allows you to do the exposition while doing an action that then shows you something about a character, like Alexis was saying. You know, the act of cooking food doesn't just give your character something to do rather than just sit in a chair and engage in dialogue. It also tells you about how the person carries themselves. It tells you about how the person interacts with somebody else. It gives you that backstory. It gives you kind of the chances to do those things. I think also there's something very intimate and warm, and especially in romance, and I think in life also, there is something about the act of cooking for somebody else. If you enjoy cooking especially, maybe not so much if you don't, but there's something about providing food for somebody and cooking and considering, you know, the other person and doing all those things that is very emotional. And sometimes there are points in a book where somebody isn't ready to kind of make the big commitment and exchange the words and even come to the realization that this person matters, but it's a way to kind of get into that and show your readers that without actually having to make a huge mind jump for a character. So I like using food, and I like using cups of tea as a way of showing somebody, you know, hey, this character, these two characters, they're going to a place. They may not be there yet, but they're on the path, and the act of kind of cooking for somebody is significant because it really says something about caring and providing for that person. Yeah, so I guess it serves a lot of different purposes. And also, I was very pushy at RWA. I met Elisabeth, and then the first time we sat down, I was like, yeah, I keep putting food in books so that I'm hoping that one day I'll get on your blog because I want a recipe. So
well, that's
another reason.
inevitable.
Is there anything else you see, Elizabeth, as far as like how people are using food in books to draw readers in or show something about characters? Or
You know, I think, well, and my blog is Cooking Up Romance, so of course I'm talking about romance here mostly. But I think one of the things that I've seen writers do, especially writers who are very, very food focused, talking to people like Laura Florent here, who writes this amazing series called Amour et Chocolat, and it's all about sort of these French pastry chefs, and she does it really well, but a lot of other authors do too. Sort of using kind of the sensuality of food in a way where maybe the characters, like Julia was saying, aren't ready to take that step yet, but it's still sort of this sensory experience that shows them sort of connecting on that sensory level before they're maybe ready for any kind of other physical intimacies.
Mm-hmm.
So other than Laura, who else does that really well? I can think of Ruthie Knox has a wonderful, she has a book about a chef, and there's a lot of food in that book. Is there anybody else that does it often and kind of you see it a lot in their books and you just think, oh, I'm going to open this and want to cook like 14 different things?
You know, I think there are certain authors who are more prone to it than others. So Jeffe Kennedy, who writes erotic romance, she mostly, and some fantasy romance as well. She even though not all of her books are super food focused, she always has a few scenes where the characters are connecting over food. It's almost just like this is how people connect in Jeffe's world over food, which is actually funny because I've connected with Jeffe several times over food. And then also Alexis Hall, who's a male romance author, he almost always has a recipe in the back of one of his contemporary romance, and they're usually food features or drinks feature in some prominent way. I mean, it's hard to pick out specific writers because I think there are really a lot that do that it's almost impossible to write romance without having food in it, although every once in a while it does happen. But your people end up in restaurants or at home or making each other breakfast, or it seems like sort of a natural thing just in terms of, I guess, courtship rituals in any time or place.
Well, it can tell you so much about a character. Are they caring, and do they care for their partner, or just very interesting things can come from, does he make you breakfast in bed in the morning, or does he kick you out?
And I do think it's about connection, and I think we've all touched on this, but I think, like we're having this conversation about food, and this is something people talk about and people connect over, even little ways. I know in one of my books, one of my main characters is a vegetarian, and kind of the way you get some witty banter between she and her love interest is that he picks on her and teases her, jokingly about being a vegetarian. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of this that kind of happens in daily life. It's also a safe space. Like, I feel like food is one of those things you talk about with people as you're getting to know them. It's not delving deeply into someone's religious beliefs or their political beliefs. And so it's definitely something that people use early in a connection to kind of, bridge that gap and get to know each other, for sure.
I used it in Tease, actually, to illustrate the differences between Adam and Elisabeth, because Elisabeth couldn't cook anything. She burned soup on the stove, and Adam was totally baffled by her inability to cook, but he came and he cooked for her throughout the series because his mother was a chef and they owned restaurants, and to him, food was just part of life. And so it was this juxtaposition between the two characters of this girl who came from such a bad family life and couldn't cook soup, and here's Adam over here who could cook anything, and he cooks for her, and I love those two characters.
I'm curious, Elisabeth, when you're deciding, what to cook for your blog, like how do you decide what to cook for books that you read that you're going to feature?
So sometimes it's completely organic. Sometimes there's a recipe or a scene in the book. I try to pick something that's pivotal. If there's a lot of food in a book, I try to pick something from a moment where there's a significant change happening or a significant moment in the relationship when I can. Then there are other books where sometimes there's just no food in them at all, or that the food that happens, or the food happens, the meals that happen really aren't at a significant point in the story. So I'll pick something like, a good example, actually, one of the Christmas cookies that I pinned to the pin board is A Matter of Disagreement by E. E. Ottoman, and it's a trans romance, and the one character smells like Earl Grey tea and lavender, and that was just so, I thought, evocative. That was just seemed like the perfect thing. I'm like, I'm gonna have to do something with Earl Grey and lavender in it, so I made these cookies that are really good for Christmas. So sometimes when there's not a lot of food in it, I'll do that. I think it's best when I can really tie the recipe to a significant moment in the story, though that's definitely my favorite. And when I can do that, I know I've found the exact perfect book for my blog.
So you're definitely culling through some of the things you read and saying this works better than others. This maybe is a good jumping off point.
Yeah, definitely. I think certain genres are easier than others that way. I think contemporary historical romance, those are always good sort of fodder for my blog. I have a real problem usually with fantasy romance, any kind of fantasy or steampunk, or it's just most of the time the food that's described is so different, or they're like roasting some kind of specific animal over an open fire or something, which I can't really do in my 2-bedroom condo.
Yeah, fair.
So I really have a hard time sometimes reviewing those, because I do try to tie everything in with food somehow.
It's funny. I feel like there are just so many opportunities in books, and whether authors realize it or not. But one of the things that I know people have criticized romance over sometimes is that the heroines never eat and the heroines never ever have to go to the bathroom. Like, nobody ever takes a break to just be like, hold on, I just have to. But I think that first of all, it's not true. And second of all, you know, if you're looking for it, I think that you can dive into these. I do think that the Laura Flora, in particular, that series, if you are a chocolate person, but really, you know, any dessert type of, there's just a sensual element to it, and food is so important. And I remember reading the first one, which I think is The Chocolate Thief.
Yeah.
Is that right? There's a very important scene that happens on a marble countertop in a chocolatier that is very important and very sexy, and it's all this stuff wrapped together. And so I think, you know, it does become a very important part of the genre, and it does, like we said, show you a lot about the book, and it can move things forward. And it's fun. Like, these books are fun, and people enjoy it. And I think that, you know, when you can get that tie-in with food and all these things that you're doing with the website, I love it. I think it's great, and I hope to see more of it, and I hope to get more recipes emailed to me. So any friends that are listening, or anybody, I want recipes.
Well, you'll definitely have to check out the Pinterest board.
I know, I'm excited.
I'm hitting as I go.
I'm really excited.
That's really awesome. You know, I think something else interesting that can happen with food in fiction, but also in life, is it's unpredictable. So, you know, sometimes you set out with the best intentions to make a fabulous dinner, and you burn the soup. You know, so I'm curious about just kind of for fun food mishaps. Like, does anybody have any food gifts gone wrong, or any behind the scenes food blogging things that people might not know? You know, about how many times it takes to get the perfect shot of food or something.
Oh God, you guys don't want to know that.
I will be straight up. I can't make rice for whatever reason on this stove that I have in New York. I can do it at home in California. I can do it, you know, where my parents live now. I can't make it here. I don't know what it is. Something about the heat and the way that whatever. I managed to burn it, scorch it, or make it mushy every single time. So it's not a part of my diet right now. I've been cooking for years, and I can cook quite well. And I don't know. I'm a lost cause when it comes to rice.
Of all the things to have to not eat, you know.
I guess, yeah.
Anybody else have any foods that are like sticking points for you, or any just kind of classic food mishaps?
Yeah, there was this one recipe, and it looked so good. I think it might have been lamb, and it was a Moroccan style lamb, and I'd never done anything with like those flavor profile. I mean, I have since, but I hadn't done it yet. And so I sent my then boyfriend, not my current husband, someone else, to the grocery store to get curry, because we needed curry for this recipe. And he came back with 1 bottle of red curry and 1 bottle of yellow curry. But of course, the recipe just said curry. So I was like, well, which one do I use? And I had just gotten my very first food processor, this little teeny one that only holds like a cup's worth of whatever, and I love to use it to chop onions, because otherwise, like, I cry. Onions make me cry. And so I put, you know, to making this sauce, put the onions in the food processor and added the red curry, and then added everything to the sauce, and basically turned it into tear gas.
Oh my gosh!
Between like the spice from the curry and the onion like puree at that point, I thought, you know, we pretty much thought we were gonna die. It was like inhaling mustard gas or something. It was so bad.
Oh no.
Yeah, we ate something else that night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to remember, there's always Chinese food. Okay, you can always order pizza. You know, if you're really desperate, there's something else, hopefully, that you're able to get if you're being adventurous and maybe outkicked your coverage.
I think my worst food disaster was my freshman year of college, and I had come down with like 15 diseases at the same time because, you know, freshman year of college, new diseases. And I just wanted comfort food, and the dorm, I was living in this nice all-girls dorm, and we had nice kitchens at the end of each hallway that we could use. And so in my sickly state, I took these cinnamon rolls, you know, the pop 'em open cinnamon rolls from the grocery store. I was like, these will make me feel better. And I went down and I cooked them, and I come back to my dorm room, and we have one counter with a sink in it, and that's it in our room. And I just set it down, and apparently the counter was wet, so the glass or Pyrex, whatever it was, just shattered into 1,000 teeny tiny pieces with my cinnamon rolls in the middle, and I couldn't eat them, and I just sat there and cried. I was like, I just wanted home and to feel better, and now I have to clean up glass.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I was at Thanksgiving, a Friendsgiving, and there were some glass bowls over lights, and I guess we didn't realize that they weren't Pyrex. And so we're sitting there, we're talking, we're several glasses of wine in, and then suddenly, boom, and the glass just explodes. And luckily it exploded away from us towards the wall, because I don't know what we would have done otherwise. But we decided that it might be time to clean up at that point. So.
There are definitely dangers to cooking. And we
I
should be aware
set
of
so much
that.
stuff on fire. It's ridiculous. Never my hair, luckily, but dish towels.
Yes, definitely. I think when we were talking about what made me think of this question was actually when we were talking about food gifts. I years ago, I probably was just out of college, and I decided it would be great to give people cranberry chutney as a gift. But I had never made cranberry chutney before, and I guess I was envisioning it being like cranberry sauce with like chopped up cranberries and Jello, and you know, however you make your a lot of people don't put Jello in it, but you know, that's what I envisioned, but I had never made either one, and so I just downloaded some recipe for cranberry chutney, and it. Now looking back, it had a lot of strange things in it, and I kind of remember cooking it and thinking like, I don't feel like this is going to taste very good. Like it seems like a weird combination. It's like onions and cranberries, but I'm like, but it's really pretty, and it goes in the jar, and I'm going to put a top on it. And I mean, I also didn't like can them in any way.
Canning's an experience. I almost ruined my stove doing that.
Yeah, and I took them to people who I feel like I may never have remembered to apologize for, and so now I feel like I take like something else that I do actually. I mean, I know how to cook, and now at this point in my life, where I have things that I bake that are actually good, but I feel like there are a couple people in my family that if I show up with any kind of baked good or cooked gift, they're just gonna be like, "Oh, thank you," and they're gonna deposit it in the trash as soon as they get home. Yeah.
She's the girl that tried to kill us. Never forget.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm really hoping that they like opened it and were like, "This is not right." I mean, that's what I would.
So
but it was very pretty.
Oh, I'm sure, and they're beautiful, especially in the jars and everything. And speaking of canning, I am a project person, and I tend to get bored and start doing projects. And I decided I was going to can some stuff because I'm in the land of apples, and I managed to actually not only let some canning, I think it was a cranberry apple jam, bubble up onto my stove, which took years and a lot of steel wool to get off because it just caramelized everywhere. I also actually got it on my hand, and hot sugar burns and hurts. And so the number of times I've knocked my hand on the top of the oven, pulling something out, or cut myself, or, you know, it's a miracle that my hands don't look like a complete mess of scars because, you know, you kind of get a little enthusiastic sometimes in the kitchen and accidentally whack yourself with something, or apparently pour burning sugar on yourself. But I don't know. It was kind of worth it. It wasn't very good.
So the picture that I used for the post, just letting the people who read my blog know that I was going to be on First Draft. This was the dessert that I made for Christmas last year, and it involved wrapping hot sugar around a circular mold, which I was like terrified that I was going to hurt myself, right? And as it turned out, that was totally fine, except for the part where I decided to test the heat of the sugar by sticking my finger in it.
Right?
I don't know. I know better. I know it's 300 degrees thermometer in it. I just wasn't thinking. And then after that, it went really, really well. Like I made pretty sugar circles, and the dessert was really good. But yeah, that was not so bright.
But I do think
has moments.
Yeah, you get lost in it in the process. I mean, I think about how many times, like you were saying, Julia, I've burned myself like on the rack in my oven that has not moved. Like it's always in the same place.
I
It didn't
move.
jump
It
up.
doesn't move. It's not like it's jumping out at me.
Right.
I just did it a couple weeks ago. We upgraded from bamboo skewers to real metal skewers for our grill, and Nate left me with a beer at the grill to go pick something up and said, turn the skewers, and I idiotically reached out to turn the stupid skewers. They're metal. They're hot.
Yep. There are no curse words in the world that can take that pain away.
No. And you immediately turn on and put it in the sink, like I do if it's my oven, and and you're like, oh, I'm fine, and then you take your hand out of the water and you're like, not fine.
Not by a long shot.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I'm curious about resources for cooking. So, websites for recipes. Like, do each of you, other than Elisabeth's blog, exactly. What are some of your favorite websites for recipes? But also, like, do you have any like kitchen tips that you would give somebody? And this is, I'm probably mostly looking at Elisabeth here. With the kitchen tips. We might all have food websites we like.
So there's two, I actually tweeted out two during Thanksgiving. The first one is from King Arthur Flour. If you bake by weight, or whether or not you, a lot of people bake by weight. So, and a lot of European and British cookbooks are in weight. And if you don't have either the weight or the cup measurement, or if you don't have a scale, or anyway, the King Arthur Flour has a tremendous resource that has like practically every ingredient you can think of, the amount of cups and the weights. And so it's kind of a loose approximation. It's not great for something that's super specific, but if you're just doing, basic like corn pudding or stuffing or whatever, you need like weights or cup measurements. It's amazing. It's so handy. And then I think the other one was Betty Crocker, that was substitutions, so emergency substitutions, which is especially handy around the holidays. Stores are closed, or you don't want to run out for just one thing because you've been to the store 5 times in 2 days. Not that that's ever happened. So those two things, I think I reference enough that I have them practically memorized. So those are definitely like my go-to resources. As far as blogs and recipes go, I have cookbooks, but I found that I cook more and more from the internet, from Pinterest, from blogs. And I do have a few favorites. I really like, there's a website called View from Great Island, and she has just a really eclectic palette. She just really cooks with a lot of different interesting things. Like I learned about pomegranate molasses from her. And I make these lamb meatballs that would make great appetizers actually at Christmas. They're so good. But anyway, so she does a lot of really interesting different sort of dishes. And then also How Sweet It Is. Her How Sweet Eats, I think, .com. And she's fun because she just sometimes combines things in like the weirdest ways. You would never think to like throw together the things that she throws together, and somehow it works. So for like different creative combinations, I really enjoy her site.
I have a website that is similar in the creative combinations part. I believe it's called 10th Kitchen. And I think she was a food writer or she was a contributor to some food website. That's how I found her. But I love her site because it's a lot of, she's heavy on herbs and infusions and a lot of cocktails. The things that I really love that I've gotten from her, there are 2 cookie recipes. One is a Mexican hot chocolate cookie with hazelnuts, and one is a lemon poppy seed pistachio cookie. It is ridiculously good. But the thing that I really love, and that is actually perfect for right around this time of year, is she does a Meyer lemon prosciutto and mozzarella pizza with some thyme. And you make the pizza dough and the whole thing, and there's something about really, really thinly sliced Meyer lemons. They're edible because the skin is so thin, you can just put them directly on and bake them. And it's like heaven. I just don't even know how to describe it. It is the reason that I own a mandolin. It's the only thing I use it for. But I just absolutely love this one particular recipe on this website. And sometimes her things are quite ambitious, but often, she's cooking I believe cooking in an apartment in Portland, I think. And so a lot of it is, low counter space and kind of interesting combinations, interesting cooking. So, but if you can get your hands on that Meyer lemon prosciutto thyme mozzarella pizza, it's really good.
That sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just sing the praises of Pinterest for 1 second? It is the most amazing website ever. Because for me, traditionally, before the world of Pinterest took place, my recipes were in a drawer, and they were cards from my grandmother and torn from magazines and circled or printed from the internet in multiple pages that I always got out of order and then had food stains on them. Mm-hmm. And so when I cooked, it was dump the drawer, find the recipe, dump everything back in the drawer again, and that's how I cooked. And then Pinterest happened. And my favorite part is that I have a board with the type of foods that I actually cook. And so, for instance, I can just go to my board and find my recipe, and voila, or Nate comes, my Nate's my husband, he comes in and he says, what am I cooking tonight? And I say, we're eating sweet potatoes tonight. And he goes, how do I cook it? And I say, go to Pinterest. And he goes to my pin board and he finds my sweet potato recipe and he cooks it. So it's just the most amazing place for sharing and keeping things that I needed desperately. So now when I'm looking for a recipe, it's the first place I go to start my research and finding a place. I can't say that I have any one blog that I end up going to because I don't pay attention at the moment to where I'm going to, but I know I have a pin board with all my recipes on it.
Especially if you're cooking for kind of large families or freezer meal type of things. I'm a big freezer person. If I can pull something out and stick it in the oven after I come home from work. The other thing is I never cooked with a slow cooker before because we didn't own one when I was a kid. And so somebody said this is writer deadline necessity. You need to get a slow cooker. And I think it actually may have been Alexis now that I think about it. And it's true because suddenly, even if it isn't the entire meal, it's a significant portion of it that's just done and out of the way. And so when I was first teaching myself how to properly use it and cook with it, which is a whole other world of cooking times and figuring out how this all works and all of that, Pinterest was absolutely fantastic. And it's fun to just poke around and get ideas. And if you're interested in something like weeknight meals, you can find tens of thousands of things pinned up there. It's almost overwhelming sometimes. But yeah.
Cool. Good. Well, we are coming up on our hour mark, so I thought it would be fun to close this out and just ask each of you, what is the last book that you read that made you really hungry? The last book you read where something just really stuck out and you were like, I've got to make that or I'm really hungry.
Well, we can start with me because I am the least helpful person when it comes to this kind of stuff. Because I don't read a ton of romance, so I'm terrible at giving book suggestions for romance. And my two biggest go-to people are the two people on the show with me because Mary Chris's books always make me hungry. She cooks chilies and lasagnas, and I was so lucky as to have her cook me chili. Lots of fun. And then Julia just wrote a story in 1 week in Hawaii with a chef, and all I wanted to do was eat after I read her book. And I look at it's on my Pinterest board. The tomato soup recipes I pinned frantically after reading her story the first time, and I hadn't gotten the email with her tomato soup recipe yet, so I had to, of course.
On that. Sorry about that.
I had to go find like 20 other recipes and try them all after cooking her book. When it comes to romance, I'm more of a movie junkie, and things like Love Actually are my jam.
Nice.
I am having a really hard time remembering the last book that I read. Oh, okay. I have two. Never mind, it's the men.
From
exactly.
0 to 2.
Right. So one is actually, I associate much more with nostalgia, which I guess works with food too. It's called The Green Gage Summer by Rumer Gooden, who was the author of a bunch of stuff. She's a British author, and basically it's a book that my mother read when she was about 16. It's about a heroine who's about 16, and she gave me a beautiful fabric-bound copy of it when I was 16. So it has all this association with it, and it's about a family that ends up kind of stranded in this really beautiful part of France for various reasons. And the reason it's called the Green Gage Summer is green gages are fruit that grow in this one particular area, and the place that they stay has these orchards of green gages. So she talks about the sun shining through the fruit and turning it golden, and plucking the fruit off the trees and it being so warm that you just eat it, and it's this wonderful summer like thing. So that's I now want I've never had a green gage before in my life, so I may have to try to figure out how I can do that. I don't even know if they're available in this country, but I really want to try one. The other thing is I read cookbooks like they're novels. I read them cover to cover, and I actually was down with family who cooks a lot of Yotam Ottolenghi's recipes, so I have plenty sitting out on my counter right now. I'm going to make something from it once we're done with first draft. So I had that out on Sunday night, and I was scribbling down my list of things that I wanted to make for the week and putting together a shopping list. And so that was the other thing. That's really easy because it's actually a cookbook, but it's wonderful if you're at all interested in a lot of vegetable. It's all vegetarian, all vegetable cooking, so it's fantastic.
Any thoughts?
You go. I think probably I read a lot, and so it's hard for me to like pin down one particular thing. I've actually been binge reading the Kate Daniels series by Alona Andrews recently, and those are not great food books. Same kind of urban fantasy. They don't eat a whole lot. They spend most of the time running around chasing various monsters. So probably the thing I read most recently that I was like super inspired by was actually a category romance by Farah Rashan. And she sets the series is set in Louisiana, and we went to New Orleans at the end of August, my husband and I, for our anniversary. And I think the combination of just like the descriptions of sort of that bayou area, and then also the having just been to New Orleans, I was just like I had like 1,000 ideas for what to cook for this book. I ended up actually making chicken wings because one of the characters' parents owns a bar. But it was really hard for me to like pick just one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her books are wonderful.
And this one was Stay With Me Forever was the name of that one. I think it's the fifth
That's
one
her Rita-nominated one, right?
You know what? I think that one just came out.
Okay, maybe
June or July.
I'm
not really sure. But the whole series. I went back and read 2 of the other previous books. The whole series has been great.
Awesome. I think much like Julia, I do also read cookbooks. So it's always nice to know someone else does that. But I think the last fiction book I read that really made me think of food, I read for my Books and Brews post a couple months ago on my blog. I read Jessica Topper's Courtship of the Cake, which the main character is a baker. So obviously, one of the main characters is a baker. So obviously there was quite a bit of food. And he makes these, he does sort of unusual pairings, like you all were talking about, as far as, cake and icing flavors. And the female main character would go in to do these cake tastings, and there's this wonderful scene describing like him laying out all these different cakes and icings and pairing them for her. And I'm actually not even a big like cake person, but I was like, I want to go have someone pair cake and icing for me. That sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
So I think that was the last fiction book I read. And then one of my all-time favorite nonfiction books for cooking is David Leibowitz's Sweet Life in Paris. and I think am I getting his name right? Is it David? Okay, yes. He talks about life in Paris, but also he is a pastry chef. Is that right, or a dessert chef?
I believe he's a pastry chef.
I think he's a pastry chef training, but just recipes at the end of every chapter, and just great nonfiction writing about cooking and living in Paris. And I think I got it for Christmas one year and finished reading it that same day.
Wow.
And
he's right
to eat all the things.
Yes.
Which is always
great too.
What was that?
His blog's great too. I just recently made a brown bread ice cream off of his website that was terrific.
Oh,
yes, he does a lot of ice creams, and I don't have an ice cream maker, but I think that's one of the things he kind of specializes in.
It's only a matter of time.
I know. Except I actually don't do a lot of milk and cream, so I'd have to do those.
That's true.
Maybe not. Maybe it's only a matter of time for me then.
I'll just enjoy it vicariously through the book. Really. Well, just to close out for the night, I will wrap around the room one more time, and if there's anything that you want to promo, just let us know. So I'll just kind of go to my left. So I'll start with Julia, and we'll go around.
Sure. So I actually am prepared with my Kindle this time if it decides that it wants to work. Usually Lexi has to do this for me because I'm really bad at this. But 1 week, if you can see it, 1 week in December just came out from her, and then Audra North and Alexander Houghton and me. And it's free. It's on all your different platforms. It's a collection of 4 short stories, about 5,000 words, so really quick if you want to just grab something to read in between all the family time and all the holiday craziness. But they're all holiday stories. Mine is called Kiss Me at Midnight, and I hope that's what it's called. Yes, it is Kiss Me at Midnight. And it's it starts on Christmas Eve and it goes through till New Year's Eve, so you have to read it and find out. But it is set in London, and food is a part of it, and whiskey and drinks and all that stuff, so check it out. And I just turned in a book today, so I don't know what the rest of my life is, but that's what I'm celebrating. It's not stuff that's out yet, but stuff that you can pre-order. I have The Governess Was Wicked is up for pre-order now. My publisher just put up a link, so I turned that book in today again for revision, so I'm very excited about that. So you should pre-order it in celebration of me finishing my work.
I will cheers you to that.
Yes, I need champagne to celebrate that. But anyway, that's me for the holidays.
Awesome. Alexis?
I am also in 1 week in December, which Julia just showed you, and my story is about my recurring character, Owen. I don't remember what I titled that story.
I can tell you in a moment. Hold on.
Is he marrying Owen?
Yes, it is.
The first one was Kissing Owen, the second one was Undressing Owen, and now this one is Marrying Owen. And I have Kissing Owen with Undressing Owen up for free, so you can read that, and then you can get our free 1 week in December and read that too. Or right behind me there is 1 week in Wyoming. There we go, 1 week in Wyoming. Which is also snowy and wintry, and I also just released my story from that, Undressing Kara, which has a sexy ass cover on it. It's 99 cents if you want to read that, and yeah, that's me.
Cool. Elisabeth?
Well, I'm not doing anything special. I'm not a writer, but my blog is Cooking Up Romance, and again, it's romance reviews paired with recipes. And actually, the URL is cookupromance.com with no ing. It's there underneath my name.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is there. And then I'll kind of be all over the place during the holidays. I'm so just watch my Twitter, and I'll point you towards all my guest posts in various places.
Yay!
Awesome. Yes, that's definitely, your Twitter feed is definitely the place to be during the holidays, I think. And thank you for sharing all the great recipes on the Pinterest board and all of that. You can find me, I'm at marychrisescobar.com, and if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get a nice weekly note from me that includes what I'm drinking, so a beer of the week, and also some information about fun bookish things that are going on around the world, and you also get a free book. It is not a winter holiday romance, it is a summer romance, so if you're living in a cold part of the world and want to warm up with a summer read, you get a free novella when you sign up for my newsletter, so would love to have you join in. Speaking of joining in, thank you all for watching tonight, and a huge thanks to Elisabeth for joining us and sharing all of her wonderful knowledge about cooking and romance and cooking in romance. So thank you so much for being
here. Thanks
so
much for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
Definitely. And happy holidays to everyone who is watching or listening to us, and we will be back next month with more good stuff. But that's it for tonight. So cheers and happy holidays.
Cheers.